thank you so much. That was so poignant and beautiful, and we're so thrilled and honored to have you here. I've been a long-time admirer from afar and have had the privilege of getting to know you in the recent years, and anyone who hasn't had the honor of reading his recent book, Gift of Anger, that is about the lessons from his grandfather. I highly recommend it. It's quite beautiful, and I'm so excited to have a new person I admire greatly and just met last night, Alexis Werner. Alexis Werner is the founder of Seeds of Hope. She created Seeds of Hope when she was 15 years old in high school after her stepfather returned from fighting in Afghanistan, and she, two of you here. And I thought that perhaps I'd start with a very brief quote, and it's one of yours, Arun, that was shared with me by Victor Spence, who is a dear friend of yours and is here with us today. And the quote, this seemed quite apt for this particular duet. Do not judge a day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you sow. And Arun, the peace farmer, is joined with the founder of Seeds of Hope, which I think is quite fitting. So I wonder if we could start with going back to Bobby's reference earlier to the peace first idea of the moment of obligation. I'd love to hear from each of you, what do you identify as your moment of obligation?
For me, my moment of obligation was, to be frank, super pissed off at my situation at home. My stepfather had come home from his third tour overseas with really severe post-traumatic stress. And I'm sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and I'm saying to my 68-year-old guidance counselor, who's a Vietnam veteran who came home and became a therapist and was working with young people, I said, I don't understand why this is happening. And he said, it's not for you to understand. I said, oh, got it. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? He said, well, you have two options. You can be angry and feel helpless and paralyzed in the situation, or you do something about it. And it was as simple as that. I said, well, what do you mean do something? He said, why don't you start a program and help veterans like your stepdad? And at that point, my 68-year-old guidance counselor and I started this organization. And it was really a way for me to cope with what was going on at home. And it was the most pivotal point of my life so far.
I think in my case, I had the same experience that my grandfather had. You know, he went as a young lawyer at the age of 24 to South Africa, and he became a victim of prejudices there, and he was thrown off the train because black people were not allowed to travel by first class. And that humiliation that he suffered transformed his life, and he became what he became. And I had the same kind of experience because after 22 years in South Africa, my grandfather had built a lot of institutes and programs and all that, and he wanted somebody to stay and continue with that work. And so my father volunteered, and my two sisters and I were born in South Africa. And I've suffered the same prejudice. Because of the color of my skin, I was humiliated and discriminated against, and sometimes even physically abused. And it filled me with a lot of rage, and I wanted eye for an eye justice. And that's when my parents took me to India and left me with grandfather. And one of the first lessons that grandfather taught me was that anger is like electricity. It's just as useful and just as powerful, but only if we use it intelligently. But it can be just as deadly and destructive if we abuse it. So just as we channel electrical energy and bring it into our lives and use it for the good of humanity, we must learn to channel anger in the same way, so that we can use that energy for the good of humanity rather than abuse it and cause death and destruction. And so after learning that profound lesson, as I grew up, I began to reflect, and I dedicated my life to carrying on my parents' and grandparents' message to the world, and trying to bring about better relationships between people.
Thank you so much. It's a very profound lesson, and one that we need to remember and keep in mind more urgently today than ever. I've been so, like I imagine so many of you, so moved and inspired by all the incredible work that people of all ages have been doing, and I would love to hear from both of your perspectives, what the unique role that young people can play today. I mean, I think we've had ample evidence of that, but Alexis, you've been on the front line of youth doing impactful peace-building work, and would love to just hear from your point of view what is unique about what young people are bringing to the movement.
Sure. So for me, I had never really been connected to other young change agents until Peace First when I was 17 or 18 years old. And so, I knew what I had felt, but then looking at the other fellows and the people who were going through the program and realizing the commonality, we all had very different backgrounds and we're dealing with very different issues, but the commonality was that we were innovative, we were creative, we were angry at situations or moved by situations that had been brought to us by no means of our own. And we were doing something about it because we had the energy and the passion to. And I feel like right now, our young people are really showing what young people have shown throughout history, and that's that they're here and we're going to make a difference regardless of what's in front of us.
Yeah, I think also she needs an applause for this.
Yes.
As I said earlier, I was really amazed by the thing that I learned today from the young people. And I'm not totally surprised, because I have found that young people have commitment, and they do have compassion, and they do want to bring about a change, but very often they don't know what to do and how to do it and all that. And if we have some ways of teaching them ways in which they can direct their anger and their frustrations into something positive, it would help them a lot. I was encouraged by this because I started young also in this work, and when I came to this country 32 years ago, and people realized that Gandhi's grandson was in the country, and I started getting a lot of invitations to go out and speak. And many of those invitations, I think about 85% of those invitations, came from schools and colleges and universities. And that made me realize that young people are thirsting for knowledge. They want to know something about this, and that's why they repeatedly called me, and I've been speaking to them about these issues. And so that's why I call myself a peace farmer. Like a farmer, I go out and plant seeds and hope and pray that I get a good crop. And I can see today that I certainly have a great crop of peacemakers.
Thank you so much. Alexis, what is one thing you want Arun to know, or what is one question that you would like to ask him?
One question. In the next 10 years, what do you want the world to look like?
Well, I would certainly want the world to look like a very peaceful place where people are living in harmony with each other, and not fighting and killing and destroying, and none of this negative things exist there. And it's not impossible to achieve. I think it is possible to achieve this if we all make a commitment to do it. We've achieved fantastic things in this world because somebody had the commitment to do it, and that has become a reality today. So if we all have that commitment to peace and harmony in this world, we can achieve that goal also. It's just that we need to take the responsibility and get involved and start working and doing things.
Absolutely. And Arun, I'll ask you the same question. What is the one thing that you want Alexis to know? Or the one question you'd like to ask her?
Well, well, I don't know whether it's a question I'd like to ask her or whether it's some little bit of advice that I'd like to give her, because she's a young person and going to be a mother and have children, and so it's important for us to know this. I think, the way that when a person doesn't behave, or doesn't do the right thing, that person needs to be punished. And that is how generation after generation we have perpetuated violence. In a non-violent situation, and I was brought up in a non-violent home, when we misbehaved, and believe me, we did misbehave, I did misbehave and did all kinds of things that I'm ashamed of, but my parents never punished me. They did penance. And this was depending on how serious the offense was. They would fast for a day or 2 days. They would feed us, they would sit at the dining table, they would talk to us, and they would say they are not going to eat because they were not good parents. They didn't teach us the right way of behavior. And by that kind of penance, they taught us how to behave and how to do the right thing there. But that also requires a good relationship between parents and children, a relationship that is based on respect and understanding and appreciation of each other. If there is not that relationship, then the children will say, well, you want to fast, go ahead and fast, who cares? And it's not going to have any effect there. So all of these things are interlinked. Having respect for your children and understanding and earning their respect and creating that kind of an atmosphere, and then we can dispense with violence and have a non-violent lifestyle. So
Thank you so much. And Alexis, as I said earlier, it's so fitting that, and such an honor to have the two of you together, Seeds of Hope and founder and the Peace Farmer, and it looks like a very bountiful future, judging from today. So thank you so much.